This is for Senator Deevers in Oklahoma. If you're not Senator Deevers, you can scroll on. But if you would like to know what I think as an 18-year educator in the state of Oklahoma about Senator Deevers' Senate Bill 1017 in this legislative session, come on into my little virtual classroom. So, Mr. Deevers, hi. I have taught in our great state of Oklahoma for 18 years. So the little babies graduating this year were born when I was a brand new baby teacher. So in your Senate Bill 1017, you are talking about there are some things happening in our schools that should not be, that they are not educationally relevant. So it's not the school's responsibility to provide those services. So let's talk a little bit about some of these, because I would like to assume positive intent, because that is the proper Southern hospitality that I have been raised in this great state of ours. So let's look at the first one, eye exams. Okay, eye exams. Why would eye exams support educational outcomes, and why would it be relevant to make sure our little students can see the words on the page when we're trying to assess if they are having reading difficulties? Well, we read with our eyeballs, at least most of us. So eye exams, they do support improved reading outcomes. Another one that, it could be a little bit of a stretch if you want, but flu shots. We do know there is scientific evidence that flu shots can lessen the severity of the flu or the possibility of contracting the flu virus during the cold months during the school year. I don't know if you've seen the news recently here in Oklahoma. We're making the news again, yay! 512 hospitalizations last week because of the flu. They're not forcing kids to have a flu shot. Parents have to opt in. Like, it's not a, hey, don't forget to sign to opt out. They have to opt in. And not all schools offer this, but this is a great preventative, because when little babies have the flu, they can't come to school. And guess what? When they miss a lot of school, they get behind, and then they're not learning to read at the pace that they should be. Let's look at another one that you have on your list. Social work. Social work. You know what these little angels on earth do? They make sure that all of our students have a safe home, that they have access to food and clothing, and that they can maybe get some community connections to help their adults pay their electric bill, so they can have lights or heat or an air conditioner. Just the basic necessities. Have you ever had to go without one of those things, Mr. Deevers? Have you ever had to go to your work and you didn't get a good night's sleep? Have you ever had to come legislate and you haven't had a meal? You had to skip some meals, so you're trying to work hangry? Is that what happened with Senate Bill 1017? You were working hangry? Did nobody want to share a Snickers with you? See, a social worker would help you get the resources that you needed just to be a basic human, so that you could maybe have the possibility to learn, because an education is the most powerful thing that we can offer another human being, because guess what? It's something that can never be taken away from them. So an education does matter, but we need to meet their basic life necessities. Another one, counseling services. This one can get confusing, and this one can get real newsworthy, right? We like to say counseling services. It's all that woke ideology and that social emotional learning, but that's not what a counselor does at school. You know what a counselor does? Counseling services do? When that little baby walks in the door and they say, my mama died last night, that counselor talks to him. Or they say, my daddy moved out because my mom and dad are getting a divorce. Guess what? The counselor can talk to them. And I know you say, well, they can't not have counseling services. I just don't want them to have them at school. Guess what? When a baby is going through trauma, a safe space, like somewhere that they feel safe, like their school where all their friends are, and it's a pattern and a habit and they feel safe there, that can be the best place for them to get those counseling services. And I can guarantee you that if their primary caregiver either is now going to be a two-house family, or their primary caregiver is no longer on our planet because they passed away, it does affect reading outcomes. It affects their ability to learn, just like being hungry does. Here's another one, occupational therapy. Do you know what an occupational therapist does? They help those little babies learn to hold their pencil correctly so they can learn to write. They help them learn to tie their shoes so they can be healthy in PE. They teach fine motor skills and how their little fingers are going to work. And here's the big one, and how this really affects reading outcomes. Did you know when I was going to kindergarten back in the early 80s, and I bet when you went to kindergarten too, you might want to ask your mama if she's still living, you had to be able to do this. And you had to reach down and touch your toes across your body, because there's this thing right here. I teach science, by the way, and it's called the midline. And if you can't cross the midline, you can't read. Did you know that, Mr. Deevers, that this is a predictor of reading outcomes? And if a little baby comes into kindergarten or first grade and they can't do that, they're going to have trouble, and they're going to struggle with learning to read. Because when we read the English language, we read from left to right, touching like a little typewriter, and we go back to left again. That is crossing the midline with our eyes. And if they can't do this, they're not going to be successful at learning to read. Occupational therapists can evaluate that and help those little babies read, and they're not missing very much class time, because they can just go right down the hall for just a few minutes, get some practice, and come on back, versus getting checked out, going and driving, coming back. See, there's a lot of time lost there. That's why it's important to have it at school. Now, here's the one that, as my grandma would say, got a bee in my bonnet as a Southern mama. Speech language pathology. I have 5 children. They've all been through public school here in Oklahoma, and I've been proud to say that. But this little darling, my last one, that little baby, you know, the baby, oh, he gets my heart every day. He can't say his R's, but you know what else he is? He's gifted and talented. He's 99th percentile in standardized testing in math. He's going to be a great asset to our great state. But that baby boy, he can't say his R's. Did you know there's a lot of physical mechanics that go into saying the R sound? I didn't. I had never had one of my own children in speech pathology. I didn't know. Have you ever had to have speech pathology, Mr. Deevers? Did you struggle with saying your R's when you were 8 years old? Did you know that the social perception of speech difficulties affects how people view your intelligence? You could be the smartest person in the room, but if you're not a good, eloquent speaker, people will not take you as seriously. Speech pathology matters. And how does this affect reading outcomes? Well, let's get some data, right? Maybe it's just me being an emotional Oklahoma mama, but it's not. So if we look at the Journal of Speech, Language, and Hearing Research, volume 63, number 11, pages 3,714 to 3,726, speech sound disorders. That's what a speech pathologist would help with. That 25% of students that are receiving speech services and have difficulties with speech also have difficulty with word decoding. If you can't decode words, guess what? You can't read. You don't have reading comprehension. Decoding matters. And if you can't say the words correctly, hooked on phonics isn't going to work for you because your phonological awareness is going to cause reading problems. So it does matter. These things that you do not think are relevant to educational outcomes are relevant to becoming a more powerful educational source in our country. We're 49th in education, Senator Deevers. That is not okay. Please, I urge you to reconsider this bill. It is a bad bill. I understand wanting to alleviate, maybe it's a budget concern for our schools, or maybe it's just really a secret way to undermine the public schools. I want to believe that that's not what you would be doing. So I urge you to rethink this bill because it's a bad bill, sir. And I can tell you one thing that we do protect here in Oklahoma is our babies. And teachers, we're going to fight for our students, and parents are going to fight for their kids. So please, just get rid of Senate Bill 1017. It's a bad bill, and it is not the Oklahoma way.